Who are the Shack 7?
The Shack 7 are 6 individual defendants, and the corporate defendants Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty, and they're currently on trial here in Trenton for simply exercising their First Amendment right, and now they're being charged with terrorism. At stake here is the lives of 6 individuals. They're facing 23 years in prison, $750,000 in fines for simply speaking out against animal cruelty at Huntington Life Sciences. I think what's really going on here is that people have committed illegal actions, people have broke windows, people have spray-painted cars, and the government can't figure out who's taking those illegal actions. So they've kind of hung these people and laid the blame at their feet because they're the easy targets, they're the sitting ducks.
Are these defendants guilty of domestic terrorism as has essentially been alleged?
Absolutely not. As I said before, the defendants have never been charged with one actual crime. They're simply accused of engaging in speech.
Terrorism is a very specific crime. And it's got some problems under U.S. law because it essentially says it's the unlawful use of force or violence against persons or property in the civilian or government population to coerce or intimidate people for social or political reasons. And it's that last pair, the social or political reasons, you can't criminalize that. That's First Amendment rights. So terrorism is very difficult to deal with. What really happens in a courtroom is you get somebody who's done a terroristic crime and you prosecute them, but you can't talk about their motives during the trial. But what really happens is if they get convicted for the common crime, arson, robbery, that kind of thing, vandalism, if they get convicted for that, in the sentencing phase, you can talk about that. And what happens really, the bottom line is they just get a longer sentence for the same crime.
Some of these people that they've just arrested on these quote-unquote domestic terrorist charges are looking at 100 to 300 years in prison. A murderer gets 8 years nowadays. A rapist gets 1 to 3 years at best. A pedophile, I don't even know. But how can we equate these the same way? I mean, there was a woman that started, I believe it was over 30 forest fires in the national forest to get her employment up so that she could go fight fires and make some money. She was given 22 months in prison. Okay, why are these people, just because they're political, if they do a crime, they should get what everyone else gets for that crime. They shouldn't be put on this pedestal for having idealism and beliefs. They should be treated just like all other criminals that do that crime.
It's my life in the balance here, and she has no idea what's going on, just whoever. Go.
My client, Kevin Jonas, is the most wiretapped person in the United States. Having that said, with all the testimony and documents that the government will bring, they will not be able to show a single incident where my client and the co-defendants tried to do harm or directed anyone to do harm.
The jury was selected today. It definitely doesn't seem like a jury of their peers. Looks like we've got an age group of early 40s up into perhaps people in their 70s. A lot of sleepers on the jury, which could be good or bad for the defendants. Yeah, a number of the juries actually slept through opening statements, through Mr. Cass's testimony, and from my understanding seemed pretty disinterested in the whole thing from opening to the testimony of Mr. Cass.
You try to look at the jury and scope them out and think, is this person going to be sympathetic to, my kid? You think you know what they might be thinking, but it's obvious appearances don't amount to anything. You don't know what's in these people's hearts. It's kind of hard because I see my second of 3 children sitting there, and he's not a criminal. He's not a violent person. He was always gentle and sweet.
I'm a big loudmouth. It's what I'm known for. And the one thing that this indictment has done, though, is it's made me question somewhat the value of speech. I mean, quite frankly, if you can spend 3 to 5 years in prison for talking, you might as well be out smashing windows. You might as well be out committing acts of sabotage. I think if we're indicted, and especially if some of my co-defendants get the sentence that that the prosecutors are looking for, I think it's going to send a message to people everywhere that, fuck it, you know? Why bother going out on speaking tours if you're going to do jail time? Why not go and commit the acts of sabotage that, you know, tend to be more effective than me standing here talking to this camera?
Last year, when the Shack 7 trial started, what we saw was a big break in activism. And this time around, we said this is just absolutely unacceptable. We have to close them down, and we will close them down by continuing to do what we're doing, by being out here on the street, targeting these targets, pounding them to the ground, letting them know that just because 7 activists are on trial doesn't mean the campaign's going to stop. There's no stopping us, and there's no stopping that. In the UK, there's trials all the time, and the activists there even tell people, don't come to the courthouse. I'd rather you out there on the street trying to close them down, working, you know, fight for those puppies and kittens and bunnies. That is fucking disgusting.
You have blood on your hands. You're a vicious, vile woman. You're responsible
No! Leave her alone, all right?
for the death
Leave her
of
alone.
100 animals. It's my business.
Why is it your business?
It's everyone's business when there's
Leave the lady alone,
suffering that goes on. It's our responsibility to speak up.
They anally electrocute the minks and the foxes. Have you ever seen them? They put a probe in the mouth, probe up the anus.
We have confrontations all the time in the streets and the city.
Hey, yo, my man with the camera, how do you feel about all this? Like this?
And then Hurricane Katrina blew in, and that really sort of changed everything.
The media is not capturing the real situation with the animals down in the Gulf.
Tell me what's going on.
And what's happening is the media is doing little fluff stories.
I know.
And promoting these big animal organizations so they get the money and the promotion.
has raised millions.
12 million.
And all they're doing is blocking the grassroots rescuers and the other rescue groups.
And the real heroes here is the military, if you could believe it. And they're sneaking to help people. And the small organizations.
Ladies, why does the military have to sneak to help animals?
Well, because they didn't get the command from the president. So what we're going to ask is that all your listeners call the White House. I even have the number to ask that they get the official command.
Most animals in Katrina died in their homes, in their cages, because they trusted Humane Society of the United States to come in and pick them up.
I don't support big, rich organizations anymore. I'm too educated.
I'm sorry, Best Friends, North Shore Animal League, small volunteers that were with no organizations, like Maggie McWayne, came in with their own money, did more rescuing than HSUS, who left in October, by the way, while still asking for money.
There was a lot of horror down there for people, for animals, and as somebody who's not necessarily animal welfare, animal rights, animal rescuer, it's just a matter of, you know, there were awful things happening to people and animals alike.
We were in the lower 9th Ward a lot, which was flooded. We did I waded through water to get dogs off of porches. A lot of breaking and entering to get dogs out of yards, out of houses.
Frankly, the strongest feeling I got down there as I left was, my God, there are these incredible groups doing a ton of work that I've never heard of.
I walked into this house, and because you're so focused on what you're doing, you're not really paying attention to what's around you. You're just looking for an animal. And I walked into this one room. There's a dog on the floor, dead. And I look around the room, and I realized I didn't walk into this room through a doorway. I walked in through a hole. The dog, in a terror-stricken panic, trying to get out of that house, broke through the wall.
The whole thing that happened with Katrina,